The House Histories project is a really exciting online initiative being put together by the Bedford Park Residents Association. It's an opportunity for homeowners in Bedford Park to explore the social history of their houses and to look at all the fun people's stories, people who've lived there, people who've lived in the community, and stitch them together to create a much bigger online resource that everybody can share. One of the big objectives is to democratise the data available in Bedford Park and democratise the history of Bedford Park. There's been some wonderful work done on particularly the architectural history, and there's been some great work done on the famous people who are living there, but a lot of it is in coffee table books. It's not accessible online, it's not searchable, and what we want to do is almost crowdsource the next generation of historical research into Bedford Park and use social media, use the web to open up access to it and to make sure that everybody can spread knowledge, share knowledge, and particularly if you're a homeowner, to make sure every homeowner has the chance to manage and to publish information about their own home.
How does the House Histories project work?
The House Histories project has a number of different facets. At its core, what we're doing is creating online tools for homeowners to capture the stories about their house and load them up onto an online tool that eventually becomes an online logbook for the history of their house. Around that, we're also asking them to categorise all the stories depending on whether it's about a famous artist or a famous writer or a politician, so we can categorise the stories and then have them as a searchable database. So alongside all the individual logs, we're creating a House Histories project website, and that's going to be public and searchable. So people can come in and type in a road name and see who's lived in that road, or type in an era and see all the famous people who've lived in Bedford Park in that era, or even type in a person and search for find out where they lived. But what we're also producing is a companion app, and the idea is that you should be able to walk around Bedford Park, and we're going to use a technology that's known as augmented reality. And the idea is you hold up your smart device in front of a particular house. The device you're using, an iPad or an iPhone, recognises where you are and which house you're pointing at. And as you look through the camera at that house, it can pull up information about that house. And there's various levels of information it can pull up. If you point your device at a Norman Shore house, at very basic level, it will be able to tell you that's a Norman Shore house and here's a basic history of that house type. If the participant of that house has taken part in the project and they've made history information public, you'll be able to stand outside the house with the augmented reality app and pull up history information. So you'll be able to stand outside the house where Pissarro lived and pull up information about when and how and why he lived there, and even see some of the paintings he painted when he was in the house. The key thing is it's all in the homeowner's control. So if the homeowner finds out a really interesting story, they can write it onto their log and they can then set whether they want that story to be public or private.
And is there any quality control? What's to stop a resident from making something up about their house?
So quality control of the stories is really interesting. In reality, these logs are the property of the homeowner, so theoretically they can write anything they want to into their log. What we're going to ask people to do, though, is provide a source for all the information. We're going to work with them with our house historian, Mel Backe-Hansen, and we're going to show them where to go and find interesting things and which archives and which resources they can search. And when they load those stories onto the website, we're going to ask them to source that information. So if we needed to, we could go back and validate it. But in reality, these are personal statements these people will make about their home.
Bedford Park does have a fascinating history. What can you tell me about the previous residents that you already know about?
Well, there's quite a lot of famous people who are known for living in Bedford Park. Probably the most famous would be W.B. Yeats, the poet. He was known as a famous Irish revolutionary poet later in life, but he spent much of his early years living and working in Bedford Park. Some of his most famous poetry, the Lake Isle of Innisfree, for example, was written when he was here. So it would be great to be able to stand outside his house and hold it up and pull up some of his poetry.
Have you found anything a bit more grisly?
A few grisly stories are starting to bubble up through the mix. So we've already found our first murder. So we have a story of an actor in Edwardian times who was stabbed to death in his theatre in Covent Garden, and he was a Bedford Park resident. So we're hoping for more murders. We're hoping for some more simple stories. I want to find out about the servants who lived here and the tradesmen and the people who worked there.
What do you think it will mean to residents to be able to find out more about their house and their neighbourhood?
I think that all of these stories are part of the colour of a neighbourhood. And if you go back, as we can with Bedford Park, 120 years, there are some fabulous stories. And if you live in a particular street and in a particular house, those stories are part of your property. They're part of your intellectual property, and they should be accessible to everybody. They should be public, and they should be shareable.